Hello everyone, welcome to chapter 6, Flow of Control, part 2. Repetition. A lot of times in programming, we have to repeat a block of statements multiple times. And the number of times can be dynamic and it needs to be scalable as well. So sometimes you might have to run it 10 times, sometimes 100, 1000. So it needs to be dynamic and scalable. So there are two constructs available in Python. One is called a for loop and the other one is while loop. In for loop, we know that we have to repeat it X number of times. The repetition is deterministic. In a while loop, the repetition happens until a condition is true. When the condition becomes false, the while loop stops repeating. And in this case, the repetition is indeterministic. For loop. So as we've seen earlier, for loop can repeat a set of statements X number of times. And for a for loop to work, we need an iterable object. And items can be accessed one at a time from the iterable object. And usually it is list or range or tuple set, or it can be a string. For loop. So let's take an example of printing numbers 1 to 10. So if you have to print numbers 1 to 10, we can statically code it like this. We can write print statement 10 times, but this is more effort and it is static in nature. So to make it dynamic and with less number of codes, as you can see, we just use 2 lines. So we have a for number in the range 1, 11. So this will create a list of 1 to 10. 11 minus 1 items will be created starting from 1, and then it will print the number. And we can make it further dynamic by getting this number from the user. So this shows how we can write dynamic and scalable repetitions in Python using for loop. Let's take a slightly complex example of calculating the total score and average score of a student. So now we have subject as a list containing max and signs. Then we have a empty list scores. Then we have a total score variable which is initialized to 0. And then we are now using a for loop. For subject in subjects, we collect the score for each subject. So we use a score variable and we use the input method to get the marks or scores in a particular subject from the user. And then we add it to the scores list. And during this repetition, we are also calculating the total score using total score plus equal to score. Right? And then we are calculating the number of score by taking the length of the subject, and then average score is equal to total score divided by number of subjects. Then we are printing the total score and average score to the user. So this is a sample execution. Provide score in max, the user provides 90. Provide score in science, the user provides 95. So the total score is 185, and then the average score is 92.5. So this shows how we can write a scalable and dynamic program using a for loop in Python. Loop. As we've seen earlier, the while loop depends on a condition. Whenever the condition is true, the while loop continues its execution. And when the condition becomes false, the loop stops repeating the code and exits the while loop. While loop with an example. So now let's take an example scenario where we want to test whether a number is even or odd, and we want to do it repetitively until the user says he does not want to continue. Now, for that, we use a proceed variable and we initialize it to true. And then while proceed is true, we take in a number from the user using the input. We check whether the number is even or odd, print it on the screen. And then we also check whether the user wants to continue by asking, do you want to continue? And the user can provide Y or N, either in capital or lower letters. And then we check whether it is a y, that means whether it is a yes. If the user provides y, then the while loop is again executed. So let's take a look at the sample execution. Initially, the program waits for the user to type a number. The user provides 4. 4 is even. And then we see the statement, do you want to continue? Y/n. In this case, the user provides a capital Y, which is an indication to proceed. Now, again, provide a number is asked to the user. The user now provides 5. 5 is odd. Now, again, do you want to continue? Y/n is printed to the user. In this case, the user provides a small n. So in this case, the while condition becomes false because the user is asking to stop and not proceed.